Okay, YouTube, I want to show you something I think is pretty cool. This may not look like much. It's just a cone-shaped stone, but this is in fact a radium cone. These were a quack medical remedy popular in the 1920s. And what you would do with this is you would put this in 1 to 2 gallons of water, and it would infuse the water with radon. And as we all know today, radon is a radioactive gas and the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States, next to cigarette smoking. So this contains a fairly decent amount of radium. Now, I'm not for sure if it's inside this stone, like if there's a hollow cavity inside that has the radium in it, or if it is actually mixed in with the cement or concrete or whatever this aggregate is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. First off, there's 3 main types of radiation. There's alpha, beta, and gamma. Alpha is fairly low threat as long as it's outside your body. A sheet of paper will stop alpha. There went the flashlight. Beta is a little bit more energetic. It takes a little more to stop it. Beta, usually it takes aluminum or steel to stop beta. And gamma is usually considered the most dangerous for external radiation because it takes lead or a lot of water, thick concrete walls, things like that to stop gamma. Now, this, as it decays, it does give off all 3 types, but it mainly gives off alpha and, I believe, some gamma. Radium is a natural decay product of uranium ore, and it's part of the decay chain of uranium as it breaks down. Radium also breaks down into radon gas, as I said earlier. So, radium, this form of radium has a half-life of about 1,600 years. So now I'm going to get several of my different Geiger counters, and we are going to see what this does. Now, first off, it's kept in this plastic bag and stored in that ammo can down there, and I handle it with gloves because you don't want any of the particles of it getting on your hands, because alpha, like I said, is blocked by your skin or a piece of paper, but if you ingest alpha particles or breathe them in, it's very bad. It will tear up your lungs, stomach, things like that. You do not want it in your body. So let me pause the video and grab a Geiger counter. So first off, this is the better Geiger S1. This is technically a scintillator. This is not a Geiger counter. As you can see, it's going above background radiation as I bring it closer. This detector primarily detects gamma. It does detect some beta, but not very much, and it does not detect alpha. You can already see it's giving a high reading of almost 4 millisieverts, or microsieverts, sorry. Now, I don't really want to touch the meter to the cone. I really don't want contamination on the meters. It's already over 6.5. You can hear it's really screaming. Now, the flickering is due to the camera. The screen of this meter does not perceptibly flicker like that. It's up over 10. It does max out at about 20. So we'll leave that there. We'll turn the sound off. And next we have this. This is the Sid Array ID. These are made in Poland, and you have to put your name on a waiting list and wait about 3 to 4 months before you get the link to buy one. I put mine on about 4 months ago, a little over, and got the link about 3 weeks ago, purchased it, and a week later I had it. So as you can see, it is really screaming right now. This is similar to this. It's a scintillator crystal inside. Now, it also has this companion app. And this is actually showing a gamma spectrum of all the different energies. And as you can see, it's already identifying energy peaks that relate to radium-226 or uranium-238, since radium-226 is a decay product of uranium-238. It's already identifying that. You can see the microsieverts, are going up. There's also this mode, which is a little faster. And you can see it's really going up too. So, let it resync there. Now, as you see, if I bring this meter away, it drops off very quickly. So, you would not want to sleep with this next to your bed. You really don't want it out in the open. I don't, too long, just because of the radon. And, you know, I wouldn't handle it for prolonged periods or mess with it for prolonged periods. It's kept down here in the basement in that metal ammo can I showed you underneath a metal table. So, just a few feet away. Now you can see the H on there shows that it's a high probability that that's what it's identifying. It's also identifying radon. Each one of these energy spikes correlates to a different energy range, and each different isotope has characteristic spikes like that that help identify it. I'm still learning about this, so I'm not going to be the best to answer stuff like that. But that gives you a general idea. It does help you tell, or it does help tell you what you found. So, the story behind this, let's turn the sound off on this, is I was going to some flea markets down in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and I took this little Ray Sid with me, Ray's ID, I don't know what the correct pronunciation of that is, and I was looking for things like red Fiesta ware, Vaseline glass, thorium-coated lantern mantles like the Coleman camping lanterns, things like that. I did not find any of those, and I was actually more interested in some of the antique telephones this particular flea market had, but I had this on search mode, and I noticed that, let's move this out of the way, you can see how the dose and the counts per minute drop way down now. I noticed a spike on here, so I backtracked and found this in a cabinet labeled as a stone for $8. The seller obviously didn't know what it was, and obviously did not know that it was radioactive. Here's the bottom of it. The price stick was still on there. And I noticed that it set the meter off, I mean, pretty big. You can see this one's over 8 microsieverts. That's a pretty high level. You know, it's pretty concerning. But, like I said, you back it off a little bit, and it starts to drop considerably. Radiation has three main things to consider about radiation: time, distance, and shielding. So you can tell the clicks really back off as we walk further away from it. It'll slowly subside back down to background. So time, distance, and shielding. So we can see with distance here, it drops off dramatically. Time relates to how long you're exposed to it. So me standing here for the 10 minutes or so that it takes to make this video is no big deal. But me sleeping with this thing beside my bed, you know, just a few feet away from my head would not be good. Or carrying it around in a backpack or something like that. There's a better view of that spectrum. As time goes by, it will create a better spectrum on that too. But, so yeah, I saw this in the flea market, and since I'm interested in radioactive items, I bought it. It was cheap enough, and my reasoning also was, I'd rather buy this knowing that it's radioactive and having some idea of how to properly store it and handle it, as opposed to someone buying it that did not know what it was, and, you know, messing with it, carving on it, something like that, ingesting some of those particles and really hurting themselves. I mean, I could have explained to the guy at the flea market what it was, but, you know, that wasn't a conversation I really wanted to have with the guy about him having a radioactive thing and then, you know, wondering who I was and, you know, why I was measuring radiation in his store and all that. So I figured, you know, $8, it's a neat item, and it was likely sold down there in Eureka Springs because Eureka Springs was known for the curing properties of their springs, and some of the springs were claimed to be magnetic. Some of them claimed to have certain minerals in them that would cure certain ailments, and we also have the Crescent Hotel, which had a hospital in it where they did all kinds of, or I should say hospital, where they did all kinds of odd and crazy experiments that would not be allowed today. So it's quite likely that this was sold in a store down there in the 1920s. And it's been down there its whole time. I do not know, but this looks to be what's called a burnett radiation or radium cone. You can see the dose rate on this one's still climbing. This one's a little slower to register, but it's likely a little more accurate. See, it's still picking up that radium. I can move it away. I'll move it over here. And you'll still see its next sync cycle. It'll still probably show that. So, one more meter I wanted to show. Let me pause. This is the Radiation Alert Ranger. This is another one of my higher quality meters. This is a Geiger counter. It uses a Geiger Mueller tube inside of it, and it's measuring in counts per minute because Geiger counters with a GM tube, as it's called, are usually calibrated for one particular isotope, and in most cases, and in the case of this one, that isotope is cesium-137. So unless you're measuring cesium-137, you're not going to get an accurate dose. But there is a way in here that we can see there is no selection for uranium-238 or radium-226, so we'll leave it in CPS. But this one does measure alpha. Right now the alpha shield is on this cover here, and we're going to hold it up next to this, not touching it. And we'll notice that the count rate, the counts per minute, is going up quite a bit. It'll go up, I think, to about 7 or 8. Okay, so it's staying close to about almost 7. Now, we're going to take this cover off. That exposes the alpha window. And if you have one of these, you've got to be very careful with that. It is very delicate. If you puncture it, you will ruin it. Now watch as the count rate goes way higher. You see it was stopping about 6,800 to 7,000. Now it's up, approaching 9. Yep, there's 9. 12,000. That is because right now it is picking up all the alpha that's coming off of this. Radon and radium both produce a lot of alpha as well. And going back over here, here's the ray Sid, some distance away. This is still identifying that spectrum, although the count has dropped a little bit. So there you go, that's really screaming. Let's turn the sound off. So it's about 13.5 at one point. It was almost up to 13.8. And it's pretty even over the whole thing. There doesn't seem to be one spot that's any hotter than the others. So we're going to put the alpha cover back on. This will let some beta and some gamma through. This is very sensitive to alpha and beta, especially when you have that cover off. It does pick up some gamma. These two are designed just for gamma. They will pick up a little bit of beta, but not much, and no alpha. So you can see that dose rate's still pretty high. And this is still picking that up. So if we move this over here a little ways. But yeah, so it's kept in that plastic bag that it's sitting on top of, just to keep any particles that come off of it contained. And it's kept in that steel ammo can down there. I do intend to try to get some lead sheets, or make some maybe, and line that box with lead, or get a proper lead container, what they call a lead pig, to keep this in. But I don't plan to keep it near where anyone sleeps or where anyone hangs out, just because it is radioactive. Now, there are a lot of other things out there that you can get that are more radioactive than this. I've seen, see, it's still showing high probability that it's identifying that way over here. It's about 1.5 feet from it. People that have uranium ore samples, some of the uranium ore samples will register in the 50s to 60 microsievert range. You know, that's way hotter than this. And, I mean, really, if you read a little bit about safe handling of things like this and what to do and what not to do, handle it with gloves. You don't want that stuff on your hands and then, you forget to wash your hands and you go eat food and you ingest those alpha particles. That'd be bad news. Potentially. Why take the chance? It's a neat piece of history. And like I said, I figured I'd keep it out of the hands of someone that didn't know what it was. So there you have it. A radioactive quack medical cone.